Hello, Declan.
How are you?
I'm good. Very excited for this one.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a deja vu from last year, isn't it?
It is. We're well into the new year, but it wouldn't be a happy new year until we go over Toni Choueiri's top 10 list.
Yeah, it's a legendary Twitter thread that's been running for a few years. Toni and his team put together their top 10 GU Oncology papers. So we're going to invite him and his mates from Dana-Farber to run us through this year's list, because it gets a massive amount of attention, doesn't it?
I know, and it looks easy, but there's a fair bit of work that goes into picking these top papers and top trials.
Exactly. So for busy people who do a lot of GU, which many of you of our audience are, and don't have time to catch up on everything, as I said in my own tweet about it, if you missed GU Oncology in 2024, didn't actually get to any meetings or papers because you're working too hard.
Don't worry about it.
This is all you need to do.
Read the tweets.
Look at these tweets. So look, the links are in the show notes and the tweets are fantastic. It's not just here's a paper and there's a summary, there's a link to the actual paper. The Kaplan-Meyers are there.
Amazing.
So I encourage you to go and do that. But what we'll do today is have a quick kind of speed dating style run through of 15 papers. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, so top 10 kidney and bladder, and then the top 5 prostate cancer trials.
Fantastic.
So,
well, look,
15, speed dating style.
Let us go to Boston and welcome Toni Choueiri, GU medical oncologist and chair of the GU Medical Oncology Service at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, to join us again on the podcast, an old friend of the podcast. Toni, welcome, and good afternoon to you.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's not the first time we see each other at many meetings. You're doing something great, not just for Australia and the continent, but also, for the whole GU community. So I'm glad you picked our tweet, and we put it also on LinkedIn, I think. Happy to tell you how everything started. You go, and then I will introduce the two important folks behind everything here.
Absolutely. You've got a team that help you do this every year, and your team have joined you today on this podcast. Welcome, boys.
Hello. Thank you.
Terrific. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see over Toni's shoulder, we have Marc and Emre Yekeduz, who helped Toni put this together. They're GU Medical Oncology team members at Dana-Farber. And great. I mean, this is obviously a big effort, Toni. It's great to have enthusiastic people like Marc and Emre to help you put this together.
They want to introduce themselves 10 seconds each. We start by Marc.
Perfect, Marc. Yeah, so here we go. Marc. Hello, Marc.
So I'm Marc. I'm a research fellow at Dana-Farber, working with Dr. Toni Choueiri and Dr. Matt Friedman on GU cancer-related topics, mainly trying to profile tumors from an epigenetic standpoint through innovative techniques to advance patient care. And I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for making the time.
Physician scientist. Marc finished his medical school. He's gonna go to residency and fellowship in the US, and he's having a dual lab and clinical experience, translational experience. But Dr. Emre Yekeduz is different. Actually, he was sent to me by a former postdoc 13 years ago, Dr. Yüksel Urun, who you know, at the University of Ankara. He's a full professor there. He was my postdoc many years ago. He's an ASCO LDP. He's a force of nature on Twitter and social media. And one time he said, I haven't sent you anyone, but I'm going to send you someone who's associate professor already at Ankara University for a couple of years, already is established. Wonderful. I want to come to the US, especially Boston, because today it's around 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's Emre Yekeduz. Emre?
Thank you very much.
Emre, welcome. Well, Yüksel Urun we're big fans of his, Toni, as well.
And like Toni said, he's a force to be reckoned with on Twitter. And I think if you really want to keep up to date in GU Oncology, follow Toni and follow Yüksel.
Follow Toni. Yeah, and he's been on the podcast a few times. But yeah, we love that link. So yeah, tell us a bit more about yourself, Emre.
Yeah, I'm a medical oncologist in Turkey now. And so I just started my journey at Ankara University just a couple of months ago. And so I am here with Dr. Choueiri over 1 year and as a postdoctoral fellow. So I'm doing research and mainly focusing on the ADCs and just ADC toxicities and working with Dr. Choueiri on this issue. So yeah, thank you very much again.
Fantastic. Well, good to have you both, and well done on all this hard work you've done in picking these top 10 papers.
Yeah, and look, before we dive into the individual ones, and I know, Toni, you have to peel off at some stage, but just take us back a little bit, and why did you start this? It's grown now to, I can see as of yesterday, this thread is like 70,000 views on Twitter alone, plus LinkedIn, and so on. But how did it all start, and how long have you been doing it?
Yeah, let me tell you, but then I'm going to ask Marc and Emre to go to the office, and they're going to talk about the papers themselves.
Fantastic.
Guys, yes, it's all yours, okay? You're representing me, so make sure you do a good job. So
hardest part of your fellowship, guys.
Before I go to my other business meeting is outside. I have to put, this is the New England Revolution. I think people, especially in Australia and Europe, Tom Powell's, etc., make fun of US soccer, but it's not true. We're going to come after you guys, World Cup 2026. Yeah. The United States going to win it all, okay? Wow. So during COVID, you know, I think, as you know, we were very, very isolated. And to some extent, we can say whatever we want about social media and what platform, but it allowed us to form new friendships and, you know, new ways how we approach the world. And, you know, there was still a lot of information coming, but at least to me, it gave me time for a year to set back. And actually, it was a silver lining to get in touch with my team, my oncologist here, and my postdoc. Remember, all of us were isolating at home and doing work on Zoom. And while with physicians, you can always practicing clinician find work to do. Maybe not as a surgeon, you're not doing surgery, but we're seeing patient virtually. Our postdoc, who normally, especially in Boston, where we're staying in a 100 square foot apartment and not allowed to leave, this was a problem. So we started in a way, kind of a journal club, looking at COVID and cancer, you know, drinks at night, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things was, let's take a look, and we started in 2021 at the GU papers, the clinical trials. And we've done also translational work in GU that you think we're going to vote, and we were like 5, we're around 15 now, that what are the top GU cancer trials published during that year? And we're going to say why, etc. And at that time, we didn't have, I should have sent these from our Lank Center Twitter account. We have an X account, but then like, let's send them from my account. I was accumulating followers due to my interest suddenly in COVID, because there was nothing else going on, COVID and cancer. And it paid dividend. That's how it started. Then, you know, then I said, you know, I'm focused a bit more on kidney than other thing. Let's make it year after year a habit, etc. We don't get it always right. For example, as you know, Declan, we not purposefully didn't make one of the very important bladder cancer trial, the one with Seth Lerner, published New England Journal of Medicine, which is the lymph node dissection, bladder cancer. We didn't make it because it was a vote, and all of us end up being medical oncologists. That's the problem. But I should next time, you know, have put it and overruled everyone. But don't worry, it generated a lot of discussion on X, and now that paper is even more famous, because like, how could you exclude this, Toni? How could you exclude how many trials we have surgeon do randomized controlled trial? So it got what you know, it deserved, which is a lot of light. And I do congratulate Seth Lerner, the SWOG team, etc., for a very important study. So that's how it all started. We start the work after Thanksgiving till like mid-December. It takes us 10 days. And between mid-December and the end of December, we send everything out. I put it on X mainly, and then on LinkedIn, but I can't do it one by one. So only with the, you know, with the link.
The links, yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well,
one of the great things to come out of COVID, just like this podcast, Declan. But Toni, you know, there is, you know, Twitter or X has kind of fallen out of favor with a lot of people. I mean, we're seeing a lot of GU oncologists leave X. So going forward, what will be some of your other platforms? I mean, LinkedIn is big, of course, but I can see you doing some TikTok videos.
And he's on Blue Sky. Yeah, TikTok, yeah.
Blue Sky, yeah.
Yeah, no, TikTok, no. My kids don't allow me to be on TikTok. Neither Instagram, but yes, I joined the Blue Sky. I think with X, there has been some, I would say some statements, some noise, some things that were a bit anti-science. I get it. And I was kind of a bit, anxious about this. And I was saying, should I just completely move and forget, etc. On the other hand, going to Blue Sky only and being in an echo chamber, is that going to help? Or you should stay on X and also participate. X still has a lot of right-wing view anti-science, but it has a lot of pro view anti-science. I think it's for everyone. So I have decided to stay, and my outreach on X is more.
Yeah.
I hope just folks understand that that's a way to improve the communication. But I don't mind other channels like Blue Sky Social, and I try to be there as much as I can, but the day is only 24 hours still.
Great. Well, look, hats off to you, Toni. Thank you again for this enormous contribution you do. It is totally fantastic.
It is amazing.
And we know you're going to dial off, and we'll drag in Emre and Marc to run through.
I hope I see you at ASCO-GU, but putting this hat is the only way to deal with the hair that Declan put in my face and make me jealous. That's the only way I have to hide it.
Well, we should send him some
We
stuff.
need to send him. I can't believe
Yeah,
he doesn't
no,
have
this
a
is-
GUCAS
this is,
beanie yet.
Greenland Revolution. Oh, I need a new one. Maybe I'll get it because it's 0
Alex
degrees.
Kudikov
That's
was
good.
showing off his GUCAS beanie in Philadelphia. I saw in a tweet last week. Well, we'll send you that beanie, and we have it's like 35 degrees here in Melbourne today. We're both in shorts.
definitely don't need
Wow,
Yeah.
Celsius.
But,
Celsius.
we'll send you a range of headwear,
Yes.
Toni. Maybe
Yeah, I think that will be great. I would use these. I would use these as much as I can.
You could pretend to be a surgeon like this, Toni. What do you think? Walk around the hospital.
I wanna be. So I asked Emre and Marc to call in, and I think they will now.
No problem.
I hope so.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Take care, Toni. Thanks
Very
so much.
good. Bye, Toni.
Okay, that was fun to have Toni join us, but now let's crack on and let our audience hear about these top 15 papers. So we're welcoming Marc and Emre back to us. So what we thought we'll do is first of all go through the top 10 bladder kidney cancer trials. That's the start of Toni's thread. You'll see it if you click on the links, and then we'll do the top 5. And you want to get on these lists, don't you? It must be controversial. We forgot to ask Toni that. I mean, does he get text messages every year going, "Hey, where's my paper?"
Well, I mean, that's what he was saying about the surgical trial. And sometimes you get more attention if you're left out.
That's true. It's better to be talked about somehow, isn't it? Okay, so let's go first of all, Renew, and do the top 10. And so we're going to follow the order of the Twitter threads. We'll go very quickly through it, top line summary and a quick comment, and we'll keep moving. So, over to you guys.
We'll start with Marc, maybe. Marc, the first paper is the EV Pembro.
Yeah, so first, I totally agree with your point. This year, there's been a lot of very interesting studies published in the field, and we've just grouped as Toni the top 10 or 15 trials. So there's a lot of trials that were not included that were also very important. So just wanted to highlight this. And yeah, so first we're starting with the EV Pembro study, which was, I think, a landmark study, the EV-302, which established enfortumab vedotin, an ADC with pembrolizumab, an immune checkpoint inhibitor, as a new standard of care for patients with locally advanced or metastatic urothelial carcinoma. So really, this study showed very interesting results as a PFS benefit with a hazard ratio of 0.45, an overall survival benefit that was tremendous, an HR of 0.47. And what's really interesting is that really no treatment has surpassed platinum-based chemotherapy in improving the overall survival of patients with previously untreated advanced urothelial carcinoma. So really, a big congrats for the authors and especially for the patients.
It's an amazing trial,
Massive
isn't it?
trial.
I mean, it's
Just
something
like,
that's
whoa,
been
boom, you know,
That's
when
right.
it was presented, and it's instantly practice changing.
Yeah,
It's not
and
like a
it's-
marginal improvement.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, forget everything else, EV Pembro. And are we seeing it renew? Are we going to see it roll out around the world with reimbursements and registrations?
I think so. I think.
Yeah, 2025.
I mean, all these things are going to take a bit of time, but I mean, you know, to displace something that's been standard of care for decades in metastatic
And
urothelial
mediocre
cancer
as well. You know,
Yeah.
a poor standard of care. Really,
Exactly.
it's always
So this
terrible
is-
outcomes for these poor patients. So
Huge news for these patients. So that's a great
top one,
Top one
deserves that. We
paper.
agree with
Yeah.
that. All right, Emre, trial number 2.
Number 2, so another study in the field of urothelial carcinoma, the Niagara trial. So for the EV Pembro, like we were talking about, advanced stages. Now we're looking more into neoadjuvant settings. So it showed that perioperative durvalumab with neoadjuvant chemotherapy in operable bladder cancer resulted in improved event-free survival and an overall survival benefit with really no new safety signals, and really like it establishes this new combination as a potential new standard of care for cisplatin eligible muscle invasive bladder cancer.
Again, something that improves on current standard of care of neoadjuvant cisplatin-based chemotherapy with perioperative durvalumab and pembrolizumab. And, you know, this was a very momentous occasion, wasn't it, Declan, at ESMO this year
big
when
plenary, yeah.
presidential session, Tom Powell's got up there and presented it. We were there for that. So very huge paper.
And important for surgical populations, of course. And I recall we interviewed Jim Cato on GUcast at ESMO. And one of the comments, Marc, was that, you know, it still remains disappointing that neoadjuvant platinum is still not well utilized around the world. We all know that. So one of the thoughts on this is, well, will it just improve the take-up of neoadjuvant strategies in general for this muscle-invasive population? So Jim, as the lead surgeon on the trial, was optimistic about that. It's going this year. We'll see a lot of attention going back into neoadjuvant, which is good for our patients.
And this is an exciting space because I think we are moving further and further towards bladder-sparing approaches in muscle-invasive bladder cancer. And I think this is one of the first things that really will push that boundary. And, you know, it'll be really interesting to see who can have this treatment and avoid a cystectomy altogether.
And that might feature in top 10 lists in future years, because there's certainly a lot of work going on in that as well.
So big congrats to Tom Powell's and the whole team for that
That's 2
paper.
blockbuster trials for starters, EV Pembro and Niagara. Okay, number 3, what's next?
Yeah, I totally agree. So next we're going to go through the Keynote 564.
Of course.
Wow.
From the home team.
So Dr. Toni Schwerer is the principal investigator on that study. But honestly, irrespective of the authorship, I think this study really deserves to be in the top 10. It was really like a landmark study, and it really improved on the management of patients after surgery with a high risk of recurrence after surgery in RCC. So Keynote 564 was the first phase 3 trial to demonstrate an overall survival benefit in the adjuvant setting in RCC using pembrolizumab. So it showed with an HR of 0.62, and really it established pembrolizumab as a new standard for high-risk RCC after nephrectomy.
Yeah,
Incredibly
big paper. And I was there when Toni presented this at ASCO GU this year. You know, it really meets a huge area of unmet need in clear cell renal cell cancer. So big trial.
And yeah, we've been talking about it quite a lot on the podcast because we have a lot of urologists listen to this podcast, Marc and Emre. And of course, this is a pure surgical population. So we need to be getting the message out to urologists out there who are doing lots of nephrectomies. And when you're seeing your patient back in the clinic, a few weeks later, you got a pathology report in front of you. In the old days, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what the pathology report said. Even if you look and said, oh, that's pretty ugly, PT3, you know, grade 3, you could offer the patient nothing. But now we need to educate ourselves as urologists that we have this amazing option that will improve overall survival. So a very important practice-changing trial. And part of the reason that we like seeing it highlighted is this information does need to get out there. You know, it doesn't happen overnight, and the reimbursement doesn't happen overnight. But yeah, we very much want to educate ourselves about this fantastic option. So Keynote 564, totally
and we've
agree.
dedicated 2 podcasts to Keynote 564. One when it read out with its PFS survival, and of
with
course
Toni.
this year with Alex Kudikov.
Yeah. Great.
Very good. Number 4.
Number 4. So we're also going with the study principal investigator, Dr. Toni Schreier. We're going to talk about the LightSpark 005, which was a phase 3 trial that compared belzutifan versus everolimus in advanced pre-treated clear cell renal carcinoma. So we had around 400 patients in each arm, or 370 to be more precise. And the 2 arms were either 120 milligrams of belzutifan, and the second arm was 10 milligrams of everolimus. And the 2 primary endpoints were PFS and overall survival. And what this study showed was a benefit in PFS, a very significant advantage. So at 18 months, the PFS was 24% versus 8.3% in the comparator arm. And an ORR benefit that was very significant, so 22% versus 3%.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting drug, isn't it, belzutifan? We didn't know anything about this a few years ago, and now it's become a really important option, the revisiting of HIF, targeting HIF. And we see it emerging out of the VHL story, but now into other areas of clear cell renal cell. And I know you've got another paper coming up on belzutifan as well, but we're excited about that here in Australia.
Definitely, yeah. It's causing a lot a waves, and this is a big paper published in New England Journal of Medicine. Yeah. And
the LightSpark series is interesting, and I can see actually just yesterday, Toni is tweeting out about LightSpark 003, I think, published yesterday in Lancet Oncology. Cabo belzutifan, so the whole belzutifan, the whole LightSpark series of stuff will continue to be very, very interesting, really positive, exciting option.
And I think even in the neoadjuvant space, it's gonna feature more and more. So I think we'll see clinical trials in the future that look at that as well.
Very good. So number 4, LightSpark 005, we love that. Yeah, clearly establishing a benefit compared to everolimus. Number 5.
Belzutifan continues. Yeah. Number 5.
Yes. So since you were mentioning Nathan about another study and the belzutifan space, so we're going to talk about LightSpark 013, which is a study led by Dr. Agarwal, so it's a randomized phase 2 dose comparison study of belzutifan in patients with advanced clear cell renal cell carcinoma. So we've seen that belzutifan has been approved in the dose of 120 milligram. However, the dose optimization is unclear in this space. So what this study looked at is whether we give 120 or 200 milligram for patients. And the primary endpoint was overall objective response rate, secondary endpoint, PFS, safety, OS. And really what we've seen is that the efficacy of belzutifan was similar between 120 and 200 milligram. So more is not always better. And this is really a practice-informing trial. Absolutely. What do you think?
Yeah, it sure is. And I love that message in the tweet. As you say, more is not always better. A question for you. Did that also have a benefit from a toxicity point of view? Is less better tolerated for patients as well as being just as efficacious?
So really the safety at both doses was really consistent with the known safety profile, and it really supported the use of 120 milligram once daily as the preferred dose for belzutifan.
Nice work. Neeraj, that's us halfway through bladder and kidney. Renew?
Yep, when we continue, it's amazing. The landscape of treatment for kidney cancer is just massive at the moment. So now we're looking in paper number 6, the addition of nivolumab to tivozanib.
Irrespective of the author, this study also deserved to be in the top 10. It's also led principal investigator, Dr. Toni where they looked at the combination of a TKI,
tivozanib plus a PD-1 inhibitor, which is nivolumab versus tivozanib monotherapy. And in sort of way, it's the same question that was asked for CONTACT-03, whether re-challenging with another immune checkpoint inhibitor is of benefit. And I think this is a really important question that should be asked like an old solid tumor. As you may recall, CONTACT-03 was negative for PFS and OS. But there's a difference, which is in this study, so we're talking about the PD-1 inhibitor, whereas like other studies, we're seeing mostly a PD-L1 inhibitor. And another thing that was different between TiNivo-2 and CONTACT-03 was that for TiNivo-2, they allowed patients whose last therapy before randomization was not an immune checkpoint inhibitor. So, for example, someone could have had a tumor progression on a doublet immune checkpoint inhibitor, and let's say he got after cabozantinib, and then he got onto the study. So really, we're trying to see the similarities and differences between those two trials. And the conclusion of the study was that the addition of nivolumab to tivozanib did not really result in improved clinical outcomes in patients with renal cell carcinoma. And this really expands on the conclusion from CONTACT-03.
Yeah, and these negative trials are very important. And I think the second line scenario is definitely important because as these positive first line trials read out, it changes the second line options and it can be confusing in clinical practice. And before Christmas, we had that very nice podcast with Tian and Regina talking about that nice paper in European Urology. There's a very nice review paper came out in European Urology a few weeks ago, summarizing first line and second line options. And that's on a podcast from December if you want to go back and look at it. But I remember that was part of our discussion about what do you do? The second line option has now changed because of the first line option, like in prostate cancer as well, I suppose. So important addition to the
That's
knowledge.
Right, and practice informing and a great example of, a negative trial, making it into Lancet, making it to ESMO and to Tony's list.
There you go. Is that the order of, you've really made it.
Maybe Tony's list
That's
first.
right, that's right, yeah.
All right, where are we up to? Number 7. Paper 7, Ambassador Trial. This is a good one.
So back to bladder cancer with this study, where the question that was asked was whether adding pembrolizumab as adjuvant therapy would be effective in patients with high-risk muscle-invasive urothelial carcinoma after radical surgery. And really, this is a very important study. Over 700 patients that were randomized either to receive pembrolizumab or in the observation arm. And just one key message we want to take out of the study is that among patients with high-risk muscle-invasive urothelial carcinoma after radical surgery, there was a significant improvement in disease overall survival in the adjuvant pembrolizumab arm compared to the observation arm.
Yeah, important for us surgeons as well. So this whole adjuvant muscle-invasive bladder cancer setting is rapidly changing. And I suppose the other thing, like in the durvalumab Niagara study, Marc, is the idea of kind of perioperative immunotherapy. You're having a neoadjuvant, but then continuing with adjuvant. It's a field, I think, that it's great to see some positive trials coming out, and where it all settles will be very interesting this year and next year. But Ambassador already gives us a really important signal for the benefit for these patients with adjuvant pembro.
So big congratulations to Andrea Polo and the rest of the team on this paper that was published in New England Journal of Medicine. Big year for pembrolizumab.
Yeah, exactly.
Adjuvant treatment for everything.
Yeah, it's true.
Very good. All right, we'll keep moving. Number 8.
Over to Emre.
Emre, tell us about this paper.
Yeah, this is a phase 1 study. This is actually very important because we know that the Montepal and the team, the Nasl showed that the CBM-588 improved the survival outcomes in patients metastatic renal cell carcinoma treated with Nivo-EP. But now in this phase 1 study, they are looking for is there any effect of CBM-588 in patients treated with the nivolumab plus TKI cabozantinib. So actually, the primary endpoint in the study was the abundance of the bifidobacterium in the stool. So, but actually, there is no difference. The study did not met its primary endpoint, but when we look at the survival outcomes and objective response rates, it's actually higher in patients receiving CBM 588. I think this is very good data, and to improve our treatment options in the near future, so we can add some, improvements to get more benefit from our treatment options in those patients.
Interesting, Declan, isn't it? It's using a live bacterial product to try and change the microbiome in these newly diagnosed metastatic renal cell cancer
change
patients.
Their response to systemic
Change
treatment.
their response
So it's
to systemic treatment.
Completely different avenue of research, isn't it? And we've seen big papers in Nature Medicine, etc. So where will this all go? Don't know, but it's great to see some work going on in GU.
And a beautifully published paper in Nature Medicine, as they always do in their true nature style.
Very good. Number 9, Zircon. Oh yeah, we know this trial.
Go.
Yeah, the Zircon trial is actually the imaging study, and the Zircon is actually aiming to carbonic anhydrase 9, and which is very highly expressed in clear cell renal cell carcinoma. They included localized patients and the renal mass less than 7 centimeter. So actually in this study, the sensitivity was approximately 85%, and the specificity is approximately 87%. So there is no safety signals when we use the radiopharmaceutical. So I think in near future, we're going to use some new techniques to detect renal cell carcinoma, maybe and without biopsy. Who knows?
We love it. And it's supported by Telix Pharmaceuticals, who are based here in Melbourne, around the corner from Peter Mac. And we had some patients on this trial. And of course, we all have been very interested in PET imaging in prostate cancer here in our centre over the years. So we're very interested in this, Renew, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, that's right. And girentuximab has been around for a few years now, and we've seen some great results. But I think, we're starting to look beyond that even. The antibody-based imaging is very good, but it can be a bit fiddly.
Yeah.
You need to have the infusion 5 days before the scan. And now we're sort of moving towards the small molecule targeting markers.
So it is really interesting because we earlier last year, Michael Hoffman from our centre published a first-in-human experience using a small molecule ligand targeting CA9, same way as Zircon is targeting CA9. It's this DBO Pharm DPI 4452, and it has exquisite sensitivity. It looks beautiful, but you only inject it a few minutes before because it's a small molecule, not an antibody. So we think the story is, we wrote about it in European Urology, we think the story is very similar to PSMA actually, which was always a good target. But the old-fashioned imaging, antibody-based imaging from 15, 20 years ago was hopeless. But it was the advent of the small molecule targeting PSMA extracellular domain that really opened up PET imaging. So I think Zircon is very welcome, but I think the future might be in these small molecule ligands like this DPI 4452 compound, which you're quite involved with, Michael. Here we've now opened a registry on this with a view to a trial.
I think there'll be a lot of great work coming out.
So good to see it on the list.
Big space to watch in the future.
Yeah.
And very good. Number 10.
Final one for bladder kidney, fraction RCC.
Thank you, Emre. This is a very promising phase 2 study that enrolled patients with advanced RCC from a huge numbers of hospitals, so 32 hospitals and cancer centers across 6 countries. And this study looked at dual checkpoint inhibition with nivolumab plus relatlimab, which is an anti-LAG3, or ipilimumab, which is an anti-CTL4 in IO-naive advanced RCC patients. And really what's like the key point or take-home message is that anti-tumor effects will observed in subgroups by LAG3 and PD-L1 expression. And really, once again, it supports nivolumab plus ipilimumab as an effective combination regimen in IO-naive patients with advanced RCC.
Very nice summary there, Marc.
It was, and I never heard of this anti-LAG3 stuff until this list. So, it's great to make it onto that list. I think they're quite strategic, the Shuairi team as well. They'll try and pick out something that's not just yet another phase 3 trial or phase 2 trial. Let's put in a microbiome one. Let's put in the anti-LAG3 thing just to give us a peek, so they can say in 4 years' time when there's a positive phase 3 trial, oh, we flagged that. We flagged that back in our list.
So
amazing.
Marc,
Bladder,
Emre,
kidney.
what a wonderful list. And it's been a big year, like we said, for bladder and kidney, Niagara, Lightspark, Keynote 564, Ambassador. It's just incredible, the data that's come out, and ultimately it's all going to benefit our patients. So wonderful list. But let's move on to prostate.
Yeah, so there we go. Only 5 papers on the prostate cancer list. This must be quite political.
So you really want to make this list.
I reckon people are texting them from November and sending them bribes and buying them beers at ESMO, saying, "Oh, come on, look, have you seen my paper?" To get on the list. And but here you go. Take us through your top 5 prostate cancer papers, 2024.
Number 1, Aranode.
So Aranode, I can start with Aranode. And this trial is actually very important. So we have several options in this setting: metastatic hormone-sensitive prostate cancer patients. We have enzalutamide, abiraterone, apalutamide, and chemotherapy as docetaxel. So now, Aranode trial showed that darolutamide plus ADT improved radiological progression-free survival compared to the ADT alone, and the hazard ratio 0.54. But actually, we are waiting for overall survival. The OS results are still pending, and if it improves the overall survival, and we're gonna get the new player in the setting, and so we are waiting excitedly.
Yeah, and I suppose it's not a surprise to see a positive trial with darolutamide, is it? Broadly speaking, these fantastic AR pathway inhibitors, we all believe will have a similar sort of class effect. It's not a surprise, is it? And no one expects that we'll see anything other than a positive OS when we have longer follow-up, Renew.
Yeah, but great to have another trial showing, in favour for the doublet treatment in MHSPC.
The ARPIs up front, and it means, and here in Australia, actually, interestingly, just for your information, when darolutamide was approved here, it wasn't tied to chemotherapy. So the data was still based on Arisons, but what we found here with real world data over the past year is lots of clinicians, us included, were using darolutamide in a doublet setting already ahead of time. But of course, in many other districts, that's not been possible. It's been very much tied to having to use chemotherapy, which is really something from a previous era. In our view, we're not keen on fans here on triplet therapy with chemo on this podcast. So it is really welcome to confirm that darolutamide is very positive in the doublet setting, the pure doublet setting. So it's a great one to see there.
And of course, it was presented at ESMO this year by Fred Start. So wonderful trial. And now it's lovely to see lutetium PSMA being featured in the top 5 prostate cancer trials. Number 2, PSMA4.
Yeah. And as we know that the lutetium is coming earlier stage in the metastatic prostate cancer. So in this study, PSMA4, this is a phase 3 trial, actually, including patients with taxane naive and metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer. So when we look at the treatment arms and lutetium PSMA versus androgen receptor pathway inhibitors, the primary endpoint is radiological progression-free survival, and the study showed that lutetium PSMA improved radiological progression-free survival in those patients against androgen receptor pathway inhibitors. And so, in the next one we will see, and the lutetium PSMA is coming earlier stage in metastatic prostate cancer patients.
Yeah, great to see it moving earlier. What are your views on the control arm of RP switch for MCRPC?
I'm not confident about it, actually, because those patients already received, androgen receptor pathway inhibitors in castration-sensitive setting. So actually, we don't have a robust data to re-challenge with the androgen receptor pathway inhibitors in prostate cancer patients. So this is the caveat.
Yeah, exactly. It is. We've talked about it a lot on the podcast. This control arm.
Switch control arm. But I don't know that we can insert our own trials into this list, but we should give a shout out to the ENZA-P trial that was also earlier in the course of prostate cancer, combination of enzalutamide and lutetium PSMA led
with
by
adaptive dosing. That's
with
a
adaptive
good one,
dosing. So that was a nice little trial that showed a PFS benefit for Enza
and actually
lutetium.
she's reading it out at ASCO GU in a few weeks. Maybe that might make it onto the list at the end of the year. You never know if it's good data.
Next year,
we'll see. But great to see lutetium coming forward and these positive trials reading out. Emre and PSMA4 has provoked a lot of discussion. Very interesting. But hey, look, it's great for this super well tolerated treatment that we all have lots of positive experience with here. Patients certainly love being on lutetium rather than chemotherapy, for example. So it is good to see these options moving forward. And number 3, you're keeping the theme. Wow, it's amazing. 2 out of the 5 top 5 prostate cancer papers are lutetium PSMA papers.
And of course, this is now in the metastatic hormone sensitive space. So we're moving earlier in the disease spectrum.
Up from PSMA, tell us about why this one got in. This is from our center where I'm on this paper.
Yeah, upfront PSMA is phase 2 randomized trial, and which includes metastatic hormone-sensitive prostate cancer patients. So the treatment arms were lutetium PSMA plus docetaxel versus docetaxel, and the primary endpoint is achieving undetectable PSA levels at 48 weeks. So when we look at the primary endpoint, approximately 40% of patients achieve undetectable PSA levels at 48 weeks. But when we look at the docetaxel alone arm, it's actually 16%. It's very low. And on the other hand, when we look at the safety profile, the adverse events profile, the actual adverse events rates almost similar and in each arm. And so actually, it seems this is a promising combination in this setting.
And congrats to our colleague Arun Azad, who led this trial.
And presented at ESMO this year.
Yeah, it is. It's a good signal. And of course, it's only PSA as response as the primary endpoint. So you certainly can't describe this as practice changing, but I think it makes it onto this type of list because it's such a strong signal of efficacy and tolerability. And of course, we have the PSMA addition trial, a large registration trial in a similar setting coming in the next year or two. But this does give us some excitement about what this larger trial powered for other oncological endpoints will show. But and this was run during COVID, we should say as well. It was a really good effort for this trial to still recruit and for these patients to be prepared to put up with the inconvenience of coming into the centre during COVID. And good news.
Very good. And with that, we move on to paper number 4, trial number 4. This is a Radicals HD trial. This is looking at ADT in combination with radiotherapy.
Yeah, this is actually a very controversial area, and we are always discussing about should we use ADT in patients receiving radiotherapy after radical prostatectomy, or how long should we use ADT if we decided to use ADT in those patients? So, and this shows that the primary endpoint was actually metastasis-free survival, and actually the only thing is if you use 24 months ADT in those patients, and it improves metastasis-free survival. But actually, when we look at the overall survival, and there is no benefit short-term or long-term ADT in those patients group. And we have similar data and previously, but actually, and this is one of the most powerful data, and because this is an important study. So I'm not sure, and still we need data about in this issue.
Yeah, because we probably use too much ADT. It does challenge us, doesn't it? These data, and I suppose how does it fit into also the environment of AI digital pathology in helping select patients? We've seen this very nice work from Dan Spratt and team, New England Journal evidence paper last year, as a way of also helping select which patients are more likely to benefit from ADT and so on. But Radicals is again a monstrous effort, fabulous trial from the UK. Well done to Chris Parker and team, and great to see it on the list. And
it's great. I mean, challenging the dogma that ADT needs to be accompanied.
2 years, 3 years for all patients. Or
exactly. So
clearly there's some
maybe
value
just
in some
for the
patients.
high risk patients.
Maybe.
Exactly. Very good.
And number 5,
not really a trial.
Yeah. The number 5 is actually it's not a clinical the senior author Marc is from the FCI, And this is really great data, including actually more than 3,000 patients. So the question is that what is the role of DNA damage repair variants on the prognosis in patients with localized high-risk disease or metastatic prostate cancer? And the data showed that BRCA2 variants actually associated with worse overall survival in de novo metastatic patients. But it's not similar. It doesn't have the similar effect on patients with high-risk localized disease or the metachronal metastatic setting. So this is important to determine our patient groups in clinical trials, in future clinical trials, and how can we select the patients and how can we apply genomic tests in those patient groups.
I thought this was really important news. We have a lot of big BRCA2 population here in our cancer center who've been on various trials, the IMPACT trial and so on. So I look after a lot of these patients, and I found this message to be very important, that number one, it is very important to watch these patients carefully, because if they do present with de novo metastatic disease, it confirms the idea that, BRCA2 definitely adds a worse prognosis. So therefore, the second message, that early detection is particularly important for the BRCA2 germline population, is there. You don't want to end up presenting with metastases, but it's good news that if you are detected with high risk localized in the BRCA2 setting, that your outcomes are favorable compared to non-BRCA2 patients. And that was a nice summary, if I got your message right on that, Emre.
Yeah. So that treatment intensification is a very important issue in those patients, metastatic hormone sensitive patients with de novo metastatic groups. So we can use some genomic markers to select patients, and how can we intensify the treatment? Yeah.
Well, on that topic, I suppose none of the trials adding in PARP inhibitors early, combining with ARPIs, etc., made it onto the list this year. But the whole idea of, where do PARP inhibitors fit? What about only selected, or give it to everybody? That whole discussion that it always bears out, great discussion at meetings.
Definitely.
Fits into this conversation a bit, but none of those papers are on the top 5 list this year. So, yeah.
You'd have to extend it to a top 10.
You would. Well, look, that's just awesome. Hopefully our audience enjoyed that. As I say, all the list, all the links are in the show notes to Toni's original thread. And well done to Toni and Marc, Emre, Yekeduz for putting all that together and entertaining us. It's been really wonderful. Thanks very much, gents.
Thank you, the whole team. Okay. Wonderful effort.
Thank you for having us. It was really a great discussion. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, Renu,
and before we finish up, Declan, in keeping in the theme of kidney cancer, our good friend Raina Mackay, medical oncologist at UC San Diego, they are launching their first annual Kidney Cancer Patients Summit. So that's coming up in March this year. It's combining kidney cancer experts, patients and caregivers, a big day of networking. And so I think it's going to be a really exciting event, and hopefully we'll see more events like this in the future from the team at UCSD. So we'll put in a link to that summit in our show notes. Yeah, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just scan in that QR code and get a link, or Google UCSD Kidney Cancer Patient Summit. Terrific. Well, that's it from us, Renu. I have to say that's been a very enjoyable podcast. Great to have had the DFCI team on. Yeah. And a really good bit of work. There's such momentum now. There's pressure to keep it up every year, of course. So if it's not Marc and Emre, it'll be whoever's in their shoes, or maybe they'll take on their own lists in future years. Yuxel will probably, he already wades in on it. He profiles stuff so well, doesn't he? Great. It's always good to look back on a fantastic year of GU Oncology. Fantastic. So that's all we have time for on this episode of GUcast. I do hope you enjoyed that. We'll be back very soon again with some more great content. Thank you.